The Prayer Born in the Fire, written by Tony Angelo. Introduction. There are moments when silence burns louder than any flame, when the air itself feels heavy with something unnamed, a truth waiting to be spoken, a reckoning that refuses to stay buried. I didn't set out to find it. It found me. In the cracks of ordinary days, in the faces of people who carried their own quiet fires, I began to see how we are all shaped by what we survive, and by what we refuse to forget. This is not a story about destruction. It's about the strange mercy that lives inside it, about the way a man learns to stand in the heat without turning away. If you listen closely, you might hear the sound of something being rebuilt, not from ashes, but from honesty. The first fire. The night the fire found me, the world was too quiet for its own good, the kind of quiet that feels like a held breath, like the earth is waiting for something to break. I wasn't looking for revelation. I wasn't praying. I wasn't even awake in the ways that matter. I was just walking, head down, carrying the weight I'd been pretending wasn't mine. But the fire knew better. It always knows better. It started as a pressure in the air, a shift, a tightening, a subtle rearranging of the world around me. The wind moved first, not brushing past me, but turning toward me, as if it had a face, as if it had eyes. And in that moment, I felt something ancient recognize me, not greet me, not welcome me, recognize me. There's a difference. Recognition is intimate. Recognition is dangerous. Recognition means you've run out of places to hide. I stopped walking. The road beneath me felt older than it had any right to be. The stones seemed to lean in, listening. The sky above me dimmed, not with clouds, but with intention. And then the fire rose, not from the ground, not from the sky, but from inside my chest, as if it had been waiting for the right moment to break free. It didn't burn. It revealed. Heat surged through me, not painful, but undeniable. It was the kind of heat that forces a man to tell the truth, even if he spent his whole life avoiding it. My breath caught. My knees weakened, and for the first time in years, I felt something inside me shift. The fire spoke without sound. It said, enough. Enough pretending. Enough swallowing rage. Enough burying prayers under pride. Enough carrying wounds like they were proof of strength. I fell to my knees, not out of reverence, but because the truth had weight, and it had finally found me. The ground beneath me warmed, pulsing like a heartbeat. The air thickened. The world narrowed to a single point of heat in the center of my chest. And then the shadow stepped forward. It rose from the darkness like a memory I had tried to forget. It wore my face, but twisted, sharper, darker, carved from every moment I had lied to myself. Its eyes burned with a rage I recognized instantly, because it was mine. Not the rage I showed the world, but the rage I hid from it. The fire didn't protect me from it. The fire introduced us. The shadow didn't speak with words. It spoke with truth. It said, I am the anger you swallowed. I am the fear you denied. I am the prayer you refused to speak. I wanted to run. I wanted to fight. I wanted to pretend I didn't know what it meant. But the fire doesn't let a man lie to himself. The heat rose around me, wrapping itself around my ribs like a forgotten inheritance. I felt the weight of generations pressing down on me, men who had broken before me, men who had risen after, men who had carried their own shadows into the fire and come out changed. The fire whispered, You are not the first to tremble. I said, I am afraid. The fire answered, Fear is the doorway. I said, I am unworthy. The fire answered, Worthiness is a lie told by the proud. I said, I am broken. The fire answered, Broken things burn brightest. I said, I cannot carry this. The fire answered, Then let me carry you. The shadow stepped closer, its heat merging with mine. I felt it enter me, not as an enemy, but as a truth I had refused to claim. The fire surged, not to destroy me, but to reveal me. And in that moment I understood, the fire had not come to punish me, it had come to name me. The world around me blurred. The night dissolved. The valley disappeared. And I stood in the center of a plain of burning earth, the first fire rising around me like a crown I had not asked for but could no longer refuse. The fire said, This is the beginning. I said, Of what? The fire answered, Of the man you were meant to become. And I rose, trembling, burning, alive, knowing nothing would ever be the same again. The shadow that wears my face, the plane of fire dissolved, but the heat did not leave me. It stayed in my bones, in my breath, in the space behind my eyes where memory and fear like to whisper to each other. When the world reassembled itself around me, I was standing in a place I recognized and didn't recognize at the same time. The valley I had walked 1,000 times, but stripped of its gentleness. The air was heavier, the ground darker, the sky lower, as if it wanted a closer look at what I was about to face. The fire inside me had quieted, but not dimmed. It waited, patient, ancient, and in that waiting I felt something shift behind me. Not a sound, not a movement, a presence. I turned, and there it was, my shadow, not the thin, obedient silhouette cast by sunlight, not the harmless shape that follows a man without question. This one stood on its own, this one breathed, this one watched me with my own eyes. It stepped forward and the ground responded, cracking, darkening, as if the earth itself remembered the weight of what I had buried. The shadow's form flickered between smoke and flesh, between something human and something I had tried my whole life not to become. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its existence was accusation enough. I felt the fire inside me stir, not in anger but in recognition. The shadow tilted its head, mirroring me with a precision that felt cruel. It wasn't mocking me, it was studying me, measuring me, deciding whether I was finally ready to face what I had spent years avoiding. I took a step forward. It took a step forward. The valley held its breath. The shadow's presence pressed against me like a memory I didn't want to remember. It carried the weight of every moment I had swallowed instead of speaking, every truth I had buried instead of facing, every wound I had pretended didn't hurt. And then, without warning, it moved, not fast, not violently, just closer. Close enough that I could see the details of its face. Close enough that I could see the places where it was me and the places where it was everything I feared becoming. Its eyes were the worst part. Not because they were angry, not because they were empty, but because they were honest. The shadow raised its hand, and the air around us tightened. The valley dimmed. The wind stilled. The world narrowed to the space between us, a space filled with every truth I had refused to carry. When its hand touched my chest, the heat surged. Not from the shadow, but from inside me. The fire rose like a tide, colliding with the darkness in a way that felt less like battle and more like recognition. I staggered back, breath shaking, vision blurring. The shadow didn't advance. It didn't retreat. It simply watched, waiting for me to understand. And I did. Slowly, painfully, completely. The shadow wasn't here to destroy me. It was here to show me what I had already destroyed. The friendships I had let die because I didn't know how to speak. The anger I had swallowed until it turned into silence. The grief I had carried like a stone in my throat. The fear I had mistaken for strength. The pride I had used as armor. The softness I had buried because someone once told me softness was weakness. The shadow was not my enemy. It was my evidence. It stepped closer again, and this time I didn't move. I let it come. I let it stand in front of me, wearing my face, carrying my wounds, holding the parts of me I had abandoned. And for the first time I didn't look away. The fire inside me rose, not to burn the shadow, but to illuminate it. The heat wrapped around us both, binding us in a truth I could no longer deny. The shadow lifted its hand again, but this time it didn't touch me. It offered it. A gesture so simple it broke something open in me. I reached out, not to fight it, not to reject it, but to claim it. My hand closed around its wrist, and the world shifted. The fire surged, the valley trembled, the air cracked with heat and memory. The shadow didn't resist, it didn't fight, it didn't vanish, it merged, not into my skin, not into my bones, into my truth. The fire inside me roared, not in pain, but in recognition. The shadow's weight settled into me, not as a burden, but as a balance, a missing piece, a long-denied truth finally allowed to breathe. When the heat faded, I was still standing, still trembling, still alive, but no longer divided. The valley exhaled, the sky lifted, the ground steadied, and the fire inside me whispered, "Now we can begin." Continuation. The path did not end when the prayer left my mouth. If anything, it sharpened. The fire inside me settled into something steady, not a blaze, not a roar, but a pulse, a heartbeat, a presence that refused to leave, refused to dim, refused to let me slip back into the man I had been before the flames found me. The valley stretched ahead, but it no longer felt like a place of trial. It felt like a place of truth, the kind of truth that doesn't shout, the kind that waits, the kind that watches to see what a man will do once he has no more lies left to hide behind. I walked, not because the fire pushed me, not because the shadow pulled me, but because something inside me, something quiet, something new, had begun to rise. A willingness, a softness, a strength that didn't need to announce itself. The sky above me shifted, the clouds parting just enough to let a thin line of light fall across the path. It wasn't warm, it wasn't bright, it wasn't dramatic, it was honest. And honesty, I was learning, is its own kind of fire. As I walked, I felt the shadow inside me settle into place, not as a threat, not as a weight, but as a companion, a witness, a reminder that the parts of myself I had feared were not monsters, but messages. Every wound had something to teach me. Every silence had something to reveal. Every fear had something to uncover. The fire had not come to erase my darkness, it had come to integrate it. The path led me to a ridge overlooking a wide expanse of land, a place I had never seen, yet somehow recognized. The horizon stretched endlessly, a line drawn between who I had been and who I was becoming. The wind rose, carrying with it the scent of something familiar. Not smoke, not ash, but possibility. The kind of possibility that feels dangerous because it requires a man to step into a version of himself he has never met. I stood at the edge of the ridge, the fire inside me steady, the shadow inside me quiet, the truth inside me awake. And then the fire spoke again, not as heat, not as pressure, but as clarity. You have carried your wounds long enough. The words weren't external, they weren't internal, they were everywhere. You have carried your silence long enough. The wind stilled, the world listened. You have carried your fear long enough. My breath caught, not in pain, but in recognition. Now carry your becoming. The ridge beneath my feet felt solid, ancient, carved by the footsteps of those who had walked this path before me. I felt their presence, not as ghosts, not as echoes, but as lineage. Men who had faced their shadows, men who had walked through fire. Men who had spoken their first honest prayer only after everything else had been stripped away. I stepped forward, not into fire, not into darkness, not into light, into myself. The fire inside me rose, not violently, not destructively, but expansively. It filled the spaces where fear had lived. It warmed the places where silence had settled. It illuminated the corners where shame had hidden. And for the first time in my life, I felt whole, not perfect, not healed, not finished, whole. The shadow inside me shifted, aligning itself with my breath, my heartbeat, my truth. It no longer felt like something separate, it felt like something reclaimed. The fire whispered, "This is the man you were meant to become." Not a man without wounds, not a man without fear, not a man without darkness, a man who carries all of it with honesty, a man who walks with all of it without shame, a man who rises with all of it without apology. The horizon ahead of me glowed faintly, not with fire, but with possibility. The kind of possibility that requires courage. The kind of possibility that demands truth. The kind of possibility that only reveals itself to a man who has walked through his own flames and survived. I took another step, then another, and with each step the fire inside me steadied, the shadow inside me softened, the truth inside me strengthened. The prayer that survived the flames was no longer a whisper. It was a vow to rise, a vow to speak, a vow to become. And as I walked into the horizon, the fire inside me whispered one final truth. You are no longer the man who feared the flames. I didn't look back. There was nothing left behind me worth returning to. I walked forward, into the world, into myself, into the life waiting to be lived. And the fire walked with me. Author's note: there are stories a writer chooses, and there are stories that choose the writer. This one chose me. It didn't arrive gently. It didn't knock. It didn't wait for permission. It came the way truth always comes when you've run out of places to hide. Through the cracks, through the quiet, through the places you pretend don't hurt anymore. I didn't write this chronicle from a distance. I wrote it from the inside. From the nights when the silence was too loud. From the days when the weight in my chest felt older than my own name. From the moments when the fire inside me refused to dim no matter how tightly I tried to hold myself together. This book is not about perfection. It's not about triumph. It's not about becoming someone untouchable or unbreakable. It's about the opposite. It's about fracture. It's about reckoning. It's about the kind of honesty that strips a man down to the bone and asks him to look at what's left without turning away. If you saw yourself in these pages, in the fire, in the shadow, in the prayer that rose from the ashes, then know this: you are not broken beyond repair. You are not alone in the dark. You are not the only one who has carried a truth too heavy to speak. The fire inside you is not a punishment. It's a compass. It points you toward the parts of yourself you've avoided. It pushes you toward the conversations you've postponed. It pulls you toward the version of yourself you were always meant to become. And if you're reading this, if you made it to the end of this chronicle, then the fire inside you has already begun its work. Let it. Let it burn away the lies you inherited. Let it illuminate the wounds you've hidden. Let it soften the places you hardened out of fear. Let it teach you how to rise without pretending you never fell. This book is not a map. It's a witness to the truth that transformation is not clean, a witness to the truth that healing is not linear, a witness to the truth that a man can walk through his own flames and still come out with something worth offering the world. If this chronicle found you at the right time, I'm grateful. If it found you too early, hold on to it. If it found you too late, it didn't. You're here now. Thank you for walking through the fire with me. Thank you for letting these pages breathe with you. Thank you for rising, in your way, in your time, in your truth. Tony Angelo.